for some bizarre reason, and I have no idea why, I think I must have been about 28, 29, and my first child was on the way, and for some reason I just decided, I think I'd like to become a game designer. That was it.
Yeah, I mean, games for me, making games, is just something I do unconsciously. Like wherever I am, I'm just thinking of ideas for games and turning things that shouldn't even be games into games.
And I'm just, when I design games, I'm in the zone, and I just can keep going, and it is just what I want to do.
Yeah.
An idea can come at any moment. I can wait and wait and wait and nothing comes, and sometimes maybe there is 10 ideas in half an hour.
You know, the ideas can come anytime from anywhere. But what always inspired me was when I saw some unused potential, some things that could be like done better, or some things when I see, okay, why never no one did this yet, and so on.
So I think a lot of it as well, you sort of absorb a little bit when you're playing games generally, and you see something a little bit different, and that triggers off another idea.
For me, it is important to make something new, to have a new idea for new things, not only a combination of all which is new. So I really try to find new ways of gaming.
A game designer must be very open with all his sense, and all what he see and hear and so weiter he must combine with games.
I'm more closing my eyes and looking into this world and seeing how it plays, seeing what materials there are, seeing, particularly feeling how I want to essentially be playing the game, what the emotions are, and then seeing how I can, I say seeing even if I have closed my eyes, yes, seeing what I need to bring together to create this.
When you're designing a game, as trying to create a three-dimensional image in your head. And so what you're trying to do is model flows of resources. Yeah, you can imagine it as, you know, this kind of moving sculpture in your head that's trying to imagine how a game will flow.
While working on ideas, I close my eyes, I think a lot, and when I use paper, then it's a reason that I can think better. It's not to write it down so that I cannot forget it or something like that. I try to do everything in my mind, and when a game worked in my mind, then I make the first prototype.
Yeah, so usually the beginnings of my design process involve a lot of brainstorming. For me, that's pencil on paper brainstorming, matching theme to mechanisms, mechanisms to theme, back and forth.
I don't consider a game idea even the start of an idea until those things come together. I'll think of, oh, I want dice stacking, and dice stacking with some sort of building robots theme. That works.
You have to take the game out of your own head. The game is not going to, any game that just stays in your own head during the design and development is not really a game yet. It has to hit the table as soon as possible so that other people can see it and play it, and that's when you're actually going to learn things.
Playtesting is the lifeblood of game design. It doesn't matter how much experience you have, the reality comes down to playing it, feeling it, and therefore also being part of the playtest, not just giving it away and say, tell me how you feel about it. You need to play if you're a designer. You need to play test, experience your own game and see what is going on, but in a way that you play and you don't drive the game.
If you're going to be designing games, you need to be very open to criticism and listen for it and be open-minded, because people will be telling you stuff and you won't hear it, and because you'll tend to fall in love with your game and you'll love certain mechanics about it and you won't actually hear it when people are telling you there's not working.
I think it's super important for game designers to be open to criticism, and a lot of them aren't. They get, especially first-time designers, tend to get very attached to their project, and that is a terrible, terrible mistake.
And it is not enough to love your own game. You have to make the game that way that others can love your game too. And of course you love your game, but be open for somebody's not liking your game. And this is the most important part for a designer, to go to the people, show the people, and really accept what they say.
Yes, sometimes there are game designs which do not come to an end. There are criticism from here and there, and change that here and there, and still not working well. And so sometimes one has to just stop a game because the basic concept just isn't working. Huh?
I've probably done that 30 times, where I've worked on something for a really long time. I've put hours and hours of effort into it, and the reaction of players that I'm getting out of the game is just not good.
You know, I believe that games are almost like children. You cannot force your child in a certain direction. If you say this child has to be an architect, you will be unhappy and the child will be unhappy and the whole result will be bad. So it is the same approach to the game designs. You have an idea and you develop it, but you cannot force it in a certain direction. You need to see how you best bring the potential to the foreground.
It's like writing a book. You know, the idea is great and you can write a really bad book. No problem. Anyone can write a bad book, but it's having the discipline to say this is bad and then rewrite it. It's the same thing with game design.
I learn something when it doesn't work, because it makes me easier to try the next idea and see what worked.
It's a process that you have to follow of practice, of design something, throw it away, design something else, usually throw it away, because you learn by doing. And the art of game design is mostly learning what things don't work.
Game design is both an art and a science. The art part can never be sacrificed. What you're making is something that comes from your heart, deep in your brain, that just feels right to you and is informed by your life up to that point. And then there's a science to it. There's real math. There's real understanding of what has come before. There's understanding of social behavior, philosophy, psychology. If you don't know that stuff, you're just guessing. You wonder why your game isn't having the effect that you're having. But it's the combination of those two that gets really good games. And the best games have both art and science deep embedded in them.
there's enough subjectivity in games and there's enough of an art form that your personality will come out in any game you make, or at least some level of expression.
Of course, you got to be creative, but you also have to be logical and procedural, and you have to be hardworking. You have to be willing to just beat your head against a problem over and over and over. And I feel like there are lots of people that have these skills, but there are very few people that have all of them.
The bottom line is there's a lot of work if you're going to design games. Too many people, I think, come up with an idea, they put it down, and they say, and they do some nice artwork on it. They say, "Here, I have a game," and maybe they do. Maybe it's something they enjoy playing, but a lot of times it doesn't have the depth of the kind of games that really need to be in the marketplace.
In this industry, is not really easy to come in, and you must push really hard yourself to get the stuff you want to do. It's like everything else, right? If you want to be a professional on some industry, you must push it hard, really.
You know, I made a lot of sacrifices and did a lot of planning and spent a lot of money and put my marriage at risk to do this because of the amount of work that I've put in. I ended up in the emergency room 2 origins ago from fatigue, exhaustion, and dehydration, and I was in the cardiac unit. I thought I was having a heart attack because I was working so hard. And
it's incredibly difficult. We don't just sit around and play games all day. And when we do, playing those games is work. It's weird when you have a hobby and you turn that hobby into your career and your hobby becomes work. And I love it. I will always love it, but it's full of deadlines. It's full of meetings. It's just like any other job. You know, there's a lot that goes into it.
Making things simple. I think, you know, young board game designers very often want to add stuff to their games. And the most difficult is to remove stuff. And my first designs 20 years ago, I started with very complex things, and I had to remove layers and layers and layers. Now I've more or less learned to start simple, and I think that's something difficult.
You may be putting in a lot of time into this game that you've developed, and the truth of it is you're probably not going to get paid well for that time. So it's got to be about the creation, especially for when you're starting out.
It's a very odd field at the moment. It's very crowded. There's lots of opportunity, but there's also lots of competition. Getting your design noticed is maybe easier in some ways than it's ever been because of crowdfunding and because of the attention to games, and probably harder than it's ever been because of the number of games that are out there.
It is extremely difficult to make a living designing board games. If anyone has the illusion that they're going to be able to do that, they need to rethink their plans.
It's very hard to make a living as a game designer. It really does work better as a career that supports a full-time career rather than one that complements or replaces a full-time career. Because most designers are getting paid a royalty based on revenue of the number of games sold. So even a very successful game, say it sells 10,000, 20,000 copies, a game designer may only be getting $1 or $2 of royalties for those games. So it doesn't add up all that much.
It's tremendously difficult to make a living selling board games or designing board games. I've consulted with board game designers who've come to me and said, "Hey Glenn, you know, how should we do this? What's the best path to get published? Or, you know, how should I go about doing this?" And my advice is always don't quit your day job, because the revenue stream from royalties, even for a good game designer, can fluctuate a great deal.
You cannot make a living from designing games. You cannot make a living from writing novels, but there are some exceptions. if you start, don't try to become one of these exceptions. Do it because your heart is in it, because you love doing it. And if you do something you love, it may actually become very successful, and then you can do a living and make a living out of it. But starting by saying, I want to be a full-time professional game designer, is setting yourself up for lots of disappointments.
One thing I like to say to people is there's a continuum to being a game designer. At one end are people like me who make a full-time job doing it. And at the other end of the spectrum is people who make a game to play with their kids or their friends and don't ever want to publish it. And there's a lot of steps in between, and I think there's a lot of places where people could be very happy.
Every individual success story is as unique as the individual. I don't know any two people who have found a career path in the same way.
If you manage to have successful games, then you are lucky because you can do what you enjoy and make a living out of it. Yeah, but many designers have their regular jobs and do games as a hobby, and that's great too. Yeah.
I think anyone who becomes a professional designer once they're actively submitting their game designs to publishers. You can have a full-time job and still be working really hard on board games. And at that point, yeah, you might have another job, but in the minds of most people, you're a professional board game designer because that's something you're trying to do actively.
I think like any art form, game design is not just a job. Game design's a passion. It's something that you have to put a large portion of your life into. You have to decide that what you're doing is more than just a job. And if you do that, you'll probably get people to notice that you put in as much as you could into your game.
The board game and the tabletop industry is growing quite a bit, and just with the with crowdfunding and the way that the market has changed, it is easier to become a published designer, I believe, than it was in the past.
When I don't think 3 days not about games, after 3 days I miss it. It's a part of my person. I started with it when I was 12 and I made it for so many years. I will not stop in my life.
Yes, absolutely. I am living the dream. I do exactly what I want to do. I can design games, and I see that these games are successful and they are being published, and that the gamers or the casual players really love the games.
I really want to keep going because this is my dream, right? So this is really what I love to do.
You know, I consider this the best job in the world. I've never been happier, and I'm glad I fell into it. It's a hole I'm glad I fell into.
I feel so lucky that I'm able to do this. So blessed, you know. That I realize it's really living the dream. There are times when it's hard, and sometimes when I need a break, or sometimes I even feel like I want to quit. But it's totally what I love doing.
I'm pretty happy having this job, and I think I am lucky that I can do what I love and make a living out of it. That's it.